So what are we talking about? Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to The Dungeon Minister. Now, we have left our heroes in a cave, a werewolf cave. A cave painted over with some pretty creepy graffiti. Go back to the last episode to check that out. It's unsettling. At any rate, they have gone back to that cave after attempting to spend the night in the wilderness, out exposed to the elements and not recovering any hit points because of it. You may remember during the battle with the Yeti, they were all severely injured. In fact, they are all in single digits, which they haven't been in since first level, and they're not happy there at all. And they spend the night. They in fact spend 2 nights in that cave recovering. Now, Touchberry does have the sword that heals, a sword of healing. Once a day he can heal, just like a Cure Light Wounds spell, 1d6 plus 1. So he uses that all of the days possible. In fact, I think the first thing he does is bring Fleetwood back from the doorway of death. He's down to like 3 hit points or something. During their time there, some other things happen. For one thing, they level up. Both of the elves become 3rd level, and Touchberry goes up to 4th level. And Foefire is now just hovering below her 5th level. Thieves, again, they advance crazy fast. Anyhow, another thing that happens is they have a funeral. You'll remember they killed the werewolf, and of course, after they killed him, he slowly turned back into a human being. And so when they return here, they find a human body. And you might remember my middle boy felt kind of bad about that. Like, you know, this was a person. And clearly, from the evidence in the cave, the writing on the wall, he was tortured by this condition. This is not something he chose. He couldn't control himself while a werewolf, and he used that, werewolf state in order to hunt and gather food and things, but he did not choose it. He did not want it. They're feeling kind of bad about killing him. Now, they know that he was attacking them. They had no choice. It was him or them kind of thing, but they want to have a funeral, and so they do. They spend part of their time at that cave hacking away at the frozen ground, and they dig a big enough hole. It's not super deep, but big enough to bury this man in. And they even say prayers over the grave. Their characters are kind of coming up with whatever they can, what they know, and they pray for his forgiveness for what he did as a werewolf, and that he's, at peace of some kind now. Which, again, as a priest, kind of happy with that. At any rate, after they have recovered, they are going to continue their journey to Hrothgar's eyes. Yish! Anyhow, they're going to continue their journey up to find Hrothgar's eyes, following the map made for them by Garrick. Now, can they trust this map? Well, as it turns out, yes. The map is accurate. He had said, don't go into the valley, and they found out why. There's a werewolf living down there. Now, as it turned out, it was for their benefit because he had that magic axe that they kind of need later on. In fact, pretty soon. But it, was a dangerous place to go. So that was correct. And the reality is, they don't know this, the reality is the map is accurate. He wants them to go to Hrothgar's eyes. He has his own reasons. Anyhow, on they go. Back up the spur of the mountain, through Highmark Pass, and out the other side. Here, the mountains, the 2 mountains that form the pass, that form the valley through which the pass leads, one of them drops off in a sheer drop. The other has a ledge that continues from the pass along the edge of the mountain. And it's onto that ledge that they go. And they follow the curve of that mountain. They are on the ledge for an entire day's worth of travel. They can't go their normal speed. It's icy, it's snowy, it's difficult to traverse, and so it takes them some time. But on they go. Around nightfall, they approach a large shelf of rock where the mountain, the side of the mountain, bows in, and the ledge continues straight, and so there's this open space. And then it closes up again, and the ledge continues on, the pathway continues on. But here in this larger space, they decide they're going to make camp because, frankly, they don't want to camp on a 5-foot wide ledge in case something happens, and down they go. At this point, where there's this bay in the mountain and there's more space on the ledge, down below there's yet another ledge, and they see the tops of trees coming up, about 4 or 5 feet above the level that they're standing on. So there's pine trees down there. Huge, tall things, and it's quite a ways down, 30, 40 feet at the least. And it looks like another ledge area that's a bit wider, and then from there it plummets down quite steep and far to the valley below, where it's also filled with trees. A lot of pine and fir and spruce, etc., but it grows mostly in valleys and sheltered places because up on the higher areas there's not enough dirt and the wind is just too intense for anything to grow. Anyway, enough arborist talk. They make camp against the wall of the mountain, and what they decide to do, because there's enough snow up here, it has been snowing as they've come, on and off during their travels it's been snowing, and so they have enough gathered on the ground, they actually build it up and make a little snow fort, kind of, like, a little snow shelter, which I thought was ingenious of them. Now, they have spent the night in this shelter, it is the morning, and they wake up, things are okay, nothing happened during the night, and the elves get busy memorizing their spells. You remember that they've leveled up, right? They're now 3rd level elves, which means they have 2 1st level spells and a 2nd level spell. And so, having gotten web on the scroll, right, there were 2 copies of web on that scroll, they each copy it into their books, and that is one of the spells they're going to memorize. It's actually the only 2nd level spell they have, so whenever they memorize a 2nd level spell, it's going to be web, right? Bob Johnny takes his usual 2 magic missiles, and Fleetwood takes his usual sleep and light. Now, they are enjoying their morning meal. Nobody's on watch anymore. The night is over. There's less of a feel of vigilance. And so they're just gathered around eating when they hear an almighty crash. What was that? They rush out of the shelter and look, and on the edge of the ledge, just by where it drops off, there's an enormous log lying there. The branch of a tree which seems to have fallen from the mountain. It didn't fall from the mountain. It was thrown from down below. And just behind it comes an enormous hand. Boom! On the ledge. Boom! And heaving itself up comes the head of a giant. That giant. Up until now, I have not used minis on the board for the bad guys. The boys had their own, and they bought one for their mama's character as well. So they've been putting it around, and I've been printing up the maps large scale so that they can do that. For this, I decided I wanted to bring in something kind of impressive. I wanted this to be a big battle. It's going to be an important battle for them, and it's an impressive opponent, right? It's not like putting out a bunch of kobolds or a bunch of goblins or something. It's a giant. So I thought it was pretty cool. So I got this guy. Now, I wanted him to be a frost giant. I really wanted it to be a frost giant. I thought that would fit the world best. As the cold comes down, the white dragon comes down, and a frost giant comes as well. I thought that would fit well. But frost giants are really, really strong. Really, really strong. And I didn't want to kill them all on the mountainside. So I thought, you know what, probably best to start with a hill giant. And you can tell the paint job on him. As I painted him, I couldn't decide if he should be a frost giant or a hill giant. So he's sort of neither fish nor fowl nor hill giant nor frost giant. But I think he turned out pretty well anyhow. Anyway, I put that down on the board. First time I've revealed a miniature, and he's fully painted and everything. So boom, that goes on the board, and their eyes are like, boing. So they arrange their minis. We've rushed out of the shelter. They see this thing heave itself up onto the edge of the mountain, and they arrange their minis on the board. The giant picks up that huge branch that he threw up there, gives them one look, bellows with rage, and charges. This giant has been hunting and hunting and hunting for food and unable to find anything. Right? The cold weather is driving animals further south. It is more competition out there for the food that is around, and so he hasn't had much success. And here are 4 full meals right in front of him. He goes for it. This encounter was planned partly just to be cool, right? I mean, that's why we do this game, isn't it? It's cool. But also to help teach them something about fighting a big opponent. Because remember, there's a dragon eventually. And I want them to be prepared as they face the dragon. And at the very first, they learn a hard lesson. The giant gets initiative. And so he's charging at them. And they've arranged their minis on the board all together. They're going to face him in a little clump. Maybe you see where I'm going with this. The giant takes that huge branch and with one swing, boom, 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 knocks 3 of the 4 over. Hits 3 out of the 4 of them. Halflings are harder to hit for anything larger than man size, and the way I figure this is he swung it around chest height for an elf and a human, and knocked all 3 of them off, and of course it goes right over the head of the halfling. So Touchberry is the only one still standing, whereas Bob, Johnny, Fleetwood, Foefire go sprawling onto the mountainside. They take some serious damage. I mean, it's a log hitting them, essentially. So they take some serious damage, and Touchberry is the only one up and the only one able to respond immediately. Respond he does, and he hits. Of course, we figure he has to be hitting, essentially groin and lower, because he's a halfling and this is a giant. He can't reach that high. At any rate, he does attack and does some damage. The others get up, and the first thing that they think of, and I think it's Bob Johnny who does it, casts Web. Now, Web, as found in the BECMI rules, will hold a larger than human-sized creature for, I guess, 1 or 2 rounds it takes him to break out. I can't remember the exact, and I'm too lazy to look, and this binder is empty anyway because I keep the rules at home. Anyway, so Bob Johnny has webbed this creature, and Fleetwood tries light on him. There's a saving throw for it, though, and the giant makes it. The light doesn't get right in his eyes. He's not blinded. Foefire just goes the old traditional stab it with her sword route, and the fight is on. The web also doesn't cover his whole body, because a giant, it covers a 10 by 10 area, and a giant is I think this guy's like 16 feet tall. So they've got it covering his chest and shoulders and arms, right? Obviously to keep him from swinging that club again. It doesn't cover his feet. So while he's trying to rip the web off, he's kicking and stomping. So his attacks then take that form. He can't swing, he can't punch, he can't hit with the club, but he can kick them. And he does, and he hits a couple of them. Foefire comes close to being kicked off the ledge. She actually, because of the position she took, the kick that he swings at her, she goes tumbling back and almost falls off the ledge. She does a dexterity check and grabs on at the last minute. So she stays up and hauls herself back on, and the fight continues. They do finish him off. It is 4-on-1, and a hill giant is tough, but it's not, unbeatable. So it's a hard fight, but they do eventually defeat him. The killing blow is one of the most epic moments we have played in this game to date. Fleetwood has been knocked down. He's prone on the ground, and he's standing up. He's lifting himself up, so he's sort of crouched down on all fours, pushing himself up. Touchberry comes running, leaps onto Fleetwood's back, launches himself up like Air Jordan, sword in hand, and plunges it into the giant's heart. Killing blow! Down he goes with a crash onto the ledge as they back up so they don't get squashed, and the fight is over. They recoup, they regather, and my eldest says, if we ever fight any more giants, don't stand together. Okay, he gets it. Good. Now, where did this thing come from? Well, over the ledge, right? What's down there anyway? They can look down, and in the snow on the ledge below, they see his tracks and where he came from. Well, can we go down there? Yeah, if you want to climb down. I have a rope. Okay, great. What are you going to tie it to? There's no trees up here. There's no jutting rocks to tie it to. And I think it might have been Bob Johnny or Touchberry. I can't remember which one says, tie it to the giant. So they do. They tie it onto his leg or something and throw it over the edge and climb down. And they're climbing past these trees, right, that are growing up from below. And they come to the ledge at the bottom. It's not hard to follow the giant's footprints. Of course, they're enormous. And they do. They follow it across the ledge. The trees thin out, and they find a cave. It's not a huge cave. It's shallow. It's huge in height and width, but it doesn't go back a real distance. It goes just far enough back to make a bit of a shelter. And there they find a rough bed, made of essentially small trees piled up, with the animal skins spread across the top of it. Yeah, I do like the branches with animal skins over it for beds, don't I? That's sort of a trope with me, isn't it? Well, I mean, the giant can't go to IKEA, can he? He can't, like, buy a futon. Anyway. So they find this cave, and in they go. It's got a massive fire pit near the entrance to keep warm and all that kind of good stuff. And in there, they do find some treasure. It's not a whole lot. It's sort of a, reward for killing a giant. Well done, you. But they find some treasure. At this point, my wife asks, why does he have treasure? What would he spend it on? And that's one of those threads that if you start pulling, yeah, it's never going to stop and the whole thing will come down, right? Why would a giant have maybe he buys stuff from other giants. I don't know. He had clothes on. Someone had to make him. Did he? I don't know. Anyway, so they gather up the treasure and they put it in their backpacks mostly. Again, it's not a huge amount. It's a few hundred coins. And so they distribute it among their backpacks and things like that and other normal sacks and stuff like that. And on they go. Remember, they have a bag of holding with them, but they don't know it's a bag of holding yet. They have a few odds and ends in there that they took from the goblins. And I think they threw the gems in there as well because they figured, oh, well, we'll just keep them in this bag. They have no idea it's a bag of holding. They haven't bothered to test it yet. Anyway, this ledge doesn't go anywhere. It ends at the mountain. So they go back up and continue on their way. The ledge they're on eventually descends down past the level of the giant's ledge, down, down, down. It goes way down into a valley. And they come to a place into the trees. It kind of dives down and the side of the mountain, and they come off of that edge of mountain that's descending into a valley. And they go through a forest. There is a well-worn path here. Something is coming and going. The giant's footprints are all over the place. There are animal footprints. This is just one of those sort of natural animal paths, animal trails, animal/giant/other creature trails that goes through forests. It's rough and it's hard going. It's not a nice, smooth, easy route, but they can follow it. Now, they've gone through for a while, and the valley starts to open up. They start to come to a place where the land descends even more. And ahead of them, now they can see a mountain that sticks up, that is clearly the highest point for quite a distance. And the elves, with their sight, can just perceive that looks like there's something built up there, something that doesn't look like just the finish of a mountain peak on top of that thing. They consult the map that Garrick gave them. That is Hrothgar's eyes. Hrothgar's eyes is some sort of watchtower. It's some sort of position from which Hrothgar could watch, could scan the area, could look. Okay, that's where we're going. As they make this discovery, and they're sort of rolling the map back up and tucking it away, they hear a howling. They decide they're going to hide themselves. They don't want to be seen, so they look for hiding places in among the undergrowth of the forest, behind trees, that kind of stuff. And up the forest path ahead of them, they begin to see some figures moving. Goblins. Goblins, 3 of whom are riding on dire wolves. I love this in the BECMI thing. It says whenever you encounter goblins outside, a certain percentage of them, I think it says like around a quarter of them, at least a quarter of them, will be mounted on dire wolves. Well, I had 3 out of 7, and here they come. They're picking their way through the forest. Where are they going? What are they doing? We don't know. Remember, the adventurers have fought goblins earlier, far south of here, south even of the Kobold and Knoll caves, almost to the keep. The goblins have ranged. So the goblins are coming down as well. They're also exploring, poking around, looking for things. Up the path they come. Remember now, my 2 elves have a burning hatred for goblins, which they take very seriously. And so there's no question, they're going to attack. It's not even a matter for discussion, right? And they do. Ambush, ranged weapons at first, and then leaping out with their melee weapons. So they get a free shot because it's an ambush, and I roll, the goblins don't see them. The dire wolves smell them and are beginning to act a little funny, but by the time the goblins are like, what's wrong, the arrows are flying. So, combat on. This turns out to be a lot harder than I'd really intended it to be. I'd intended it to be a minor skirmish, and they just killed a giant. They don't need another major set-piece battle, but they get one anyway. Huge battle breaks out, and it turns out to be very tough. Part of the thing, of course, is the direwolves can attack as well. The goblins mounted on the direwolves have spears, so they're long enough to reach past their mount. Web is used on one of the wolf riders and captures him and sticks him. And Fleetwood casts Sleep on one of the goblins, the goblin who appeared to sort of be in charge. The goblin who looked like the toughest and the one who, when the attack came, started barking orders at the other. Fleetwood sleeps him, and down he goes. Battle continues. There's a huge fight between Foefire and a mounted goblin and direwolf and another goblin on foot. They corner her off to one side, and she's fighting for her life. And it's not until they see this that Bob, Johnny, and Touchberry rush to her aid. Fleetwood is caught up with another goblin rider to another side, and of course the third direwolf and rider have been webbed, so they're out of commission for a little while as the direwolf tries to tear away at the web and just gets his fur more caught. The fight continues. At some point, the webbed direwolf does break loose because the direwolf's strength is high enough. I decide that he's going to be able to get out of this. It takes quite a few rounds, but again, this fight goes on and on and on. Part of it is bad luck with dice. Part of it is just they're tougher than I expected them to be. That was the starts to move in the direction that character came. Around that point, Fleetwood had killed his opponents, Bob, Johnny, and Touchberry had dodged the aid of Foefire, and Foefire slowly takes off after this guy. Whips up the bow, which takes it in one action. She goes, yeah, bow, not an arrow. But this thing already beyond melee range. He shoots and one shot takes down the rider, which is good. And then at this point, the other two have finished dealing with the rider and direwolf, and they also know they shoot as well. They lay down that direwolf. He has some damage to their so they came out. Now they've got carnage around them, dead goblins, dead direwolves, and one sleeping goblin. They tie him to a tree. Okay. They tie him up to a tree and wake him up. I think with a slap or snow in the face or something like that. They wake him up. They want information. They interrogate him. What are you doing this far south? Where were you going? What were you looking for? They're peppering him with questions. This becomes something that they start to do a lot of. Whenever they can, they capture a member of the party they're fighting, a goblin, gnoll, whatever. They capture and question. They want information. They want to know who Morag is, right? They want to know why everything's moving south. And so they're seeking information, and they question this goblin. Now, this goblin coughs up a bit more information than the gnolls did. You remember, all the gnolls would really say is, Morag, mountains no good no more. This goblin says, Morag, Morag. And they're like, well, what Morag? Who Morag? Why Morag? Where Morag? And all he'll say after that is, unstoppable, too big, too fierce, unstoppable. And so they're starting to piece together what has happened. Morag, whatever Morag is, drives out the goblins. The goblins come down and drive out the kobolds and gnolls come and begin to cause trouble for the humans. They're starting to piece it together. At this point, one of them, I think it was my eldest, guesses Morag might be a dragon. And they think if it's a dragon, it's probably a white dragon. I mean, with all the cold that's coming down, the dragon might be bringing the weather or might be coming with the weather. So they start to piece it together. But then they also say, well, maybe Morag was that giant. Maybe Morag was the giant, and that's who pushed them out. Well, maybe, maybe not. Anyway, they gather up anything of value from these goblins. Not much, a few coins here and there. My favorite, Electrum, is back. It's making an appearance. I'm going to put an Electrum mine somewhere here in these mountains. I've decided that. Now, they had consulted Garrick's map just before the goblin battle, remember? And they had found, yes, that is Hrothgar's eyes. They're pretty sure that's what it is. And on the map, he shows the valley going down, but he also shows off to the right. He shows a path there and indicates that's the way they should go. That's where they veer off to. They begin hunting toward the right as this valley descends, and they find a spur of the next mountain that kind of sticks out toward this valley. And on that spur, there is a ridge which runs along. There's a ridge, a shelf of rock, which begins at the bottom and begins to climb up. They take that. That leads them for the rest of the day. The goblin encounter happened kind of midday. Little afternoon kind of time. So this takes them the rest of the day, and they end up high in the mountains. They start to wonder, where on earth are we going to make camp? There aren't any nice, convenient, wide spaces in the ledge. There's really no protection from the elements up here. They've got wounded. They need someplace to rest safe. That's when they find it. Cut into the rock wall, as they sort of come around a curve of the mountain, cut into the rock wall in a place that is out of the prevailing wind, there is a cave cut, or a passage cut. It's clearly made on purpose by some intelligent creature. It's squared off. It's not a natural cave at all. It's not very big. It's about 10 feet wide, standard dungeon dimension, and 30, 40 feet deep. Just a straight cut in. This was intentionally put here centuries ago for soldiers or supply trains, anyone coming up to go to Hrothgar's Eyes. Acknowledging that it was too far of a journey to make in one day or anything like that, this was cut here as a shelter, a place where you could stay before making the last leg up to Hrothgar's Eyes. So they find that. At first they're a little leery, they're a little suspicious. What's in here? Why is this here? But they investigate it. There are some bats that have nested in there for the winter, but they don't bother them too much, and they decide they will camp there. A bit of guano to move around. But unfortunately, they didn't bring any firewood with them, and there's nothing to burn up here. But they make do for the night, huddled together near the back of this cave, and they spend a slightly uncomfortable but safe night in the mountains. The next day, they wake up, and they go to the mouth of this cave, and they look across a valley, and there they see Hrothgar's Eyes, much closer now. And they can definitely make out, even the human can make out, there is something built up there. We're very close to Hrothgar's Eyes.